Mr Speaker.
I call the member for Buderim.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I rise to make a contribution in relation to the State Development, Natural Resources and Agricultural Industry Development Committee report on the Auditor-General's report in relation to the flood resilience of river catchments. Mr Deputy Speaker, the impact of flooding on communities across South East and Queensland more broadly remains fresh in people's memories, and it is right that important work such as reducing the impact of floods on communities is at the forefront of government action. The average financial loss experienced from flooding was $377 million per year across Australia, and Queenslanders make up 35% of all Australian properties at risk of flooding. Put simply, Queenslanders are more prone to get flooded, and when they have been flooded, the financial impact has been significant. Any steps we can take to mitigate such impact need to be pursued. Mr Deputy Speaker, I experienced firsthand the dreadful impact of flooding when I led some of the first soldiers in and around Grantham in the aftermath of the devastating 2011 floods. I'll forever remember the all-pervading stench of death and destruction that was wrought on a small town ill-prepared to deal with it. I will never forget the sense of great sadness at searching for toddlers and their grandmothers. Memories of families' lives turned upside down in a moment due to a devastating torrent of water that tore a community apart. Knowing the impact that such an event has on a community, I find it astounding that a local council would fail to respond to the Auditor-General's inquiries in relation to the effectiveness of flood-resilient activities in river catchments which directly affect their community. But that, Mr Deputy Speaker, is exactly what occurred in the case of the Ipswich City Council, who failed to respond when asked for feedback from the Auditor-General. It is little wonder that such an incompetent and bumbling council needed to be removed, and I only wish it had occurred sooner. Mr Deputy Speaker, I note the Auditor-General's recommendation that flood resilience activities should be coordinated at a state and catchment level. I support the establishment of a catchment management authority, as this best addresses the cross-jurisdictional issues which sometimes arise. I support the notion that we need to remain flexible enough to employ approaches that work best considering local conditions, but it is also important that resources are applied to best effect for the good of the entire catchment, not just a single local government area. I note the work of the Queensland Reconstruction Authority and the significant progress which has been achieved in this regard, but more needs to be done. Mr Deputy Speaker, I note evidence received by the committee in relation to warning systems and flood monitoring. It is clear that more needs to be done to modernise our approach in this regard. The fact is, there is still a requirement to manually read gauges to establish water levels, and this is unacceptable. Similarly, my experience in places like Grantham tells me that we need to employ better strategies to warn Queenslanders when they are in imminent danger from events such as flash flooding. Mr Deputy Speaker, the range of actions that have been implemented to strengthen flood resilience across Queensland will make Queensland more flood resilient. We need to continue the focus as the years pass and our memories fade, so that future generations do not have to experience the destruction that Queenslanders have unfortunately had to suffer too often in the past.
I call the member for Burnett.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.